Okay, let's begin. So it's a mimer, Matzah Shabbos Parshas Shmini. This was in Tafshin Lamed Ches, 1978, where the Rebbe was bringing on Matzah Shabbos, because then impossible to use a microphone because of the heart attack took place. That's Simchas Torah. And so Shabbos Parshas Shmini, like this year, Parshas Parah, Parshas Shmini is Parshas Parah, Mevorach Chodesh Nisan. It was also Mevorach Chodesh Nisan, Tafshin Lamed Ches. Vaydaber Havai El Moshe V'Aaron Leimer Zois Chokes HaTorah Hashetziva Havai El Leimer Goim. This is Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, "This is the chukah of the Torah. This is the command of the Torah, or the statute or decree of the Torah that Hashem commanded, saying, V'yikchu elecha para aduma. They shall take for you a red heifer." Doing B'yukir it's known the questions of our Rebbeim, the Siyim, the Tzarech L'Ham, we need to understand. Why is the mitzvah paras, the para aduma, different than all the other karbanos? That all the other karbanos are supposed to be made inside, as we will elaborate. And here, this carbon, the carbon of para aduma, needs to be made specifically outside. That's how it's prepared. Not like all the other karbanos that are made specifically inside of the Mishkan or the Beis Hamikdash and so on. And the fact that it's made inside is something that has to do with a place that Hashem chose. In other words, this is an important area. This is something of significance. It's not just the Mishkan. It's the place that Hashem chose. So here we have a place available to us that Hashem chose, and that very place that Hashem chose, we're saying, no, the para aduma is not made over there. The para aduma is made outside. We cannot compare it to the goat that was sent outside the base of Mikdash. As we know that on Yom Kippur, there was a lottery made, and there were two goats. One goat was offered inside, and one goat was sent over the mountain, over the cliff to be thrown down. So therefore we could say, here's another example of something that is brought outside of the base of Mikdash. Said it was also outside. So the Rebbe says that's not a comparison. Why not? Because the Soyer Mishtalech was for Azazel, it says. It was sent outside. It was sent away. The light carbon, it's not considered a carbon. And we're soon going to explain how para aduma is called a carbon. Para aduma is an inshal carbon as opposed to para aduma. It was called a carbon. Like the Alter Rebbe brings down the Gersa Kodesh, the expression in the Gemara that says the chatas kairachmana. The Torah called it chatas. Chatas is one of the type of karbanos. So we see that the Torah refers to as a carbon. By the soil that's sent to Azazel, that's not referred to as a carbon. That says just you have the two seirim, you have to put on them the gerolas, you have to put on them the lottery, and then you send one off, the one that the lottery went to go to Azazel. But it doesn't say anything about calling it a chatos or a carbon and so on. Here we find by the para aduma that it's referred to as a carbon. So he says, if so, the question is, why is this carbon of para aduma distinct that it's brought outside of the base of Mikdash? So we need to understand that we find by para aduma an unbelievable thing, a wondrous thing. Only by para aduma do we find the expression, this is the chukah of the Torah. We find the expression Zois Chukas. Mamarim bring down, other Mamarim emphasizes. We find, for example, by Pesach, we find the expression Zois Chukas. But it doesn't say Zois Chukas HaTorah, it says Zois Chukas HaPesach. It doesn't say Zois Chukas HaTorah. So what's the idea of para aduma being called something so general? It is the chukah of the entire Torah. So first of all, the Rebbe is going to explain the idea that it's called chukah. The fact that it's called chukah, that's understood. It's the Torah aspect. The fact that para aduma is called a chukah is not such a unique thing. It's not such a novel thing. It's not something special in the mitzvah of paraduma kidu, as it's known. There are three divisions and types of mitzvahs. Eidos, chukim, and mishpatim. There are ceremonial or testimony mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs that are super rational decrees, and then there are civil laws. And the difference between them is that the civil laws and even the testimonial ones are something that we understand according rationally, logically, and chukim is super rational. There's not just paraduma, there's many mitzvahs that fall into the category. We don't say there's only one mitzvah that's a chayik and everything else falls into Eidus Mishpatim. We say there's three categories of mitzvahs. There's an Eidus category, there's a Mishpatim category, and there's a category of chukim, which means there's a series of mitzvahs that fall into that category. And the Rebbe adds that in truth, the idea of chukim and mitzvahs is not just to a particular category. A group of mitzvahs are called chukim, but in the inner look of all things, all mitzvahs are a level of chukim. In addition to the fact that in the simple sense, it's that way in the details of the mitzvahs. So the Rebbe said over here two things. Sorry, I rushed through it. There's two different points he's making over here. One in the brackets and one before the brackets. I'll first mention the brackets, then we'll go back to what he's saying before the brackets. The Rambam, if I remember correctly, Moreh Nevuchim says that even though we can explain and we have reasons for mitzvahs, but the details of the mitzvahs, we do not have necessarily explanations for. I think it's the Moreh Nevuchim says it. Let's see the footnote. He points to the Moreh Nevuchim on the bottom. Meaning, let's say we have an understanding, an explanation of what film is about. Film is l'shabed hamoyach v'alev, but why does it have to be black? As I've mentioned many times before, I got a question online. Why can't my film be pink? And why does it have to be specifically square and exactly square? And why it only, why does it have to be straps and whatever? There are many details of the mitzvah that don't have an explanation. The same thing, you could look at many, many mitzvahs. Many mitzvahs we have halachas that are, the mitzvah itself is logical, but this particular idea of the mitzvah, the specifics of the mitzvah, is not that clear. Let's say, just one more example. Let's say the Daled Minim. The Daled Minim, we know they represent different types of Yidden or different types of Avodah and Sam Shachar, bringing down to the heart. All fine and good. But why is it that you need to have a Hadas that only has 3 leaves on each area? But if it's like 2 leaves or it's missing leaves, that makes it not kosher. Or, in some cases it doesn't fit into Hadar. But that itself you could ask, why does it have to be a pre-Eitz Hadar? Why does it have to be that if the esrog has a blemish on it, it's not good? Not all the details are logical and explained. That's one idea, how in all mitzvahs across the board, you could have the idea that it is chukim. Another concept that you could have, and this is the pnimius einyanim that I spoke about earlier, the pnimius einyanim is that all mitzvahs come from Chachma Ilah. And that idea, because it comes from such a high place, beyond our comprehension, so it's just that all mitzvahs started off from Chachma and even higher than that. It started off from Hashem's Rotz, and Hashem's will is totally beyond our understanding. It's not even in the category of Chachma. Except certain mitzvahs Hashem desired and decided it should come down even to a Chachma where human beings can understand. But really, they all began in a place beyond understanding. So even the most logical mitzvahs, not to steal, not to kill, whatever, all these mitzvahs really began with Hashem's will before the idea of Chachma was even created, and definitely not our Chachma, the way we understand Chachma. So therefore, all mitzvahs are at their core something that transcends rational understanding. And this is something that Alter Rebbe mentions in Tanya, and we're going to quote that right now, right after the brackets, towards the bottom of the page. Before Begeres HaKodesh Rebekam HaKodesh, let's explain in the Geras HaKodesh in Tanya and in many other places. Even those mitzvahs that do have a reason, those mitzvahs that fall into the category of Eidus and Mishpatim, this reason that's understood to us is not the ultimate reason. It's only what Hashem allowed to dribble down something that we should be able to comprehend. In the mitzvah is enclosed an inner level that's beyond intellect and understanding. So now the Rebbe is going to add in the brackets one more point. In addition to the fact that the mitzvah itself at its core is higher than understanding, and in addition to the other fact that we said that every mitzvah has parts of it that are beyond understanding, then there's another thing. Regardless if it's a mitzvah that I understand or comprehend, regardless if I would be able to know the true reason or not, I have an obligation to serve Hashem like a servant, which means that because I have an obligation to serve Hashem like a servant, I need to do it regardless and with the same bittul as if I don't understand. Let's see it inside. I knew in the brackets again. In addition to the fact that the fulfillment of all mitzvahs has to be in a way of a decree, and we should not be doing it because of the reason or the special character and the specialness that every mitzvah has. That's not why I should be fulfilling it. I should be fulfilling it because I was commanded to do it, not because of anything having to do with my understanding. And we see that actually in how we make a bracha on the mitzvahs. Like the nusach of the bracha on all mitzvahs. He sanctified us with his mitzvahs and he commanded us. So we're fulfilling it as his command, meaning that as far as we are concerned, whether there's a reason or whether there's no reason, that's not really of my concern. My concern is I have to fulfill it as if it's something that's completely beyond understanding. In addition to that component, so he's getting back to what he brought before from Begeres HaKodesh, the Gam HaMitzvahs Atzma, Gam Elu Sheyesh Aleim Tam, also the mitzvahs themselves, even those mitzvahs that have an explanation, they really are beyond intellect and understanding. It's just that Hashem afterwards brought it down to understand. When Nimtza comes out, the fact that a paraduma is an idea of a statute and a super-rational law, that's not such a novel thing. So therefore, the fact that we're calling it Zois Chukas is not a strange thing to say, not about paraduma, and even to say it about many mitzvahs of the type. But the problem and the issue that we have in the pasuk is but we need to understand. Why does it say over here this is the chuk of the Torah? Though it's only one of the 248 positive commandments, specifically by the mitzvah of paraduma, it says this is the chukah of the Torah. So why is it? Why is it like it's only one of 248? Why is it considered the chukah of the entire Torah? Also, it's known one of the explanations of chukas in the word that it's something that's being run, it's something that's being directed. It's the way things are custom. Fiza nimtza, according to this, it comes out. What does it mean? This is the chukah of the Torah. This is the direction. This is the way. That the order of the way how it runs and the content of the mitzvahs of paraduma, it's the order of how it runs and the content of the entire Torah, including also the mitzvahs of the Torah. Like will be explained later on in the details of the halachos of paraduma. not just the general idea of what Parah Adumah came for, but the specific manner in which the Parah Adumah was prepared to be able to be ready to be sprinkled on a person. So it's in that preparation, in the details of that, it's going to be explained how their content is similar to the entire Torah. But Tzarech L'Hav, we need to understand what's the idea of the Parah Adumah? Because of that, it's distinct and different than all the mitzvahs of the Torah. That Shedavke Parah Adumah Yaseder V'Atochen D'Chol HaTorah. Specifically, Parah Adumah indicates the order and the content of the entire Torah. Okay, any questions? Let's go on. We're holding the second page.
So the question, just to clarify, everything is ultimately arbitrary. I mean, the tefillin could be yellow. There doesn't necessarily have to be a reason.
Everything is in a way of a decree of Hashem. All the mitzvahs of the Torah are in a way of a decree. So that's the decree aspect is not what puzzles us here in the passage. What puzzles us is, why is it something that's like the statute of the entire Torah? What is it about Parah Adumah that is like the entire Torah is like directed by it and indicated by it, and it corresponds to the entire Torah? Second page, second paragraph. The idea behind this is the mitzvah Parah Adumah in Yanu mitzvah Tshuva. The idea of the mitzvah of Parah Adumah, the idea behind this, the mitzvah of Tshuva, as we're going to bring later in the Maimer, that the mitzvah of Parah Adumah came in two ways as to it Tshuva. One idea is because it came to atone for the Chet HaEgel, because it says, let the mother come and clean up the mess of her child. The Egel is a calf, a baby cow, so the cow has to come and take care of the baby cow. So that is one concept of tshuva. Another concept is because the idea of the Parah Adumah comes to purify from contact with a dead body. Death is associated with klippa, associated with averis. Some that cleaves to Hashem, that's the level of life. Some that separates from Hashem, that's the idea of rishoyim, afil b'chayim krim mesim. The evil ones, even when they're alive, they're called dead. Salkopan mitzvah Parah Adumah, which is about repairing that and taking care of that, is the counteraction to sin, which means tshuva. Shumza, therefore, therefore, though it's only one of the mitzvah Torah, therefore it's distinct and different than the rest of the Torah and its mitzvahs, because the Torah and mitzvahs is something that is not on the same level like tshuva, as we will explain. Therefore, the making of the Parah Adumah was specifically outside of the Beis Hamikdash, because the idea of Parah Adumah is the mitzvah of tshuva, like it says in Shir Hashirim, that Hashem found us, I found you outside. That's the idea of tshuva. Though we are prior to doing tshuva in a state that's like outside of the realm of kedusha, still in all, Hashem finds us and we connect to Hashem again. It's an avoida in matters that's outside of the boundary of kedusha, because it's now going to take even things that a person did that were negative and bring him into kedusha. As opposed to all the other matters of Torah and mitzvahs, which is not tshuva, that their avoida is an internal avoida in matters of kedusha. That's why all the karbanos are inside the Beis Hamikdash, whereas the Parah Adumah, which symbolizes tshuva, is outside the Beis Hamikdash, indicating that's outside the realm of kedusha. So now the Rebbe is going to say, but hold on, don't we know that mitzvah is about elevating things from outside inside? We're taking things that are permitted and we're making them holy. But so he says in the brackets, after avoid mitzvah, though the avoid is to transform and make from permitted matters, we have to turn them into a mitzvah. Mikol makim tachlisahu lachnisam v'sinyan reshus, which is chutz lifnim. The goal is to bring in those matters that are permitted, that's outside, internally. And not that the avodah is in an outside place. As opposed to paraduma, it's about working with the outside. In other words, you're going to a place where things are negative, and over there you're dealing with the negativity, and there you're transforming, as opposed to physical objects, just like a carbon. You're taking an animal doesn't live in the base of English, you're taking it and you bring it in, you're offering it. Here, you're not offering it. Here, you're bringing something that's in a realm outside of Kedusha, and you are now in that outside, in the Paraduma, you are there working with it. You are there doing the tshuva. You are there in your place, transforming yourself. So he says, he's going to explain what does that mean. What does that mean that in the place of the outside is the tshuva? Hine, not tshuva, the idea of tshuva, is about repairing sin. Like it says, also they shall confess for the sins that they did. The pasuk does not leave its simple meaning. It says shall confess their sins, even though many times of Chassidus, when we talk about chait, when we don't limit ourselves to an actual sin of transgressing one of the 365 negative commandments, we often talk about chait, malashon chisaron, it's a lack, it's a deficiency, according to their level, they're not as high as they could be, etc., etc. But in the simple meaning of the text, it's going on the literal simple meaning of a sin. Like it's obvious in the simple sense, it should carbon specifically on the literal sin. That's what you bring a carbon. Along with the carbon, the Chazal say that you need to do tshuva when you bring the carbon. And there's also like it says, that it's obligatory that when a person brings a carbon, he also has an obligation to confess his sins. So the very fact that we're talking about a carbon, that itself, when we talk about a carbon is about a chet. And the chet, or at least vidui, is about a chet. Now he's talking about. As we know, the sin is from the totally 3 Talmudic clippers. Not only are they outside of the boundary of Kedusha, they're not even in a neutral area. Klippas Noiga is true, it's a klippa, but it's still a klippa which can be elevated. It's a klippa which is not as bad. But a sin is not klippas Noiga. A sin, as we know, is connecting and involved and taking chayis and drawing down energy into the shalosh klipsat meis. Therefore, the avodah of tshuva, which is to repair matters of sin, is also an avodah that's outside. It's not contradictory to what's explained in many places. That the primary idea of tshuva is to attain and reach a level that the spirit should return to the Eibusher that gave it. So that means actually a very high level. You're telling me it's about chutz. You're telling me it's about working with the outside. Here we're talking about the ruach tashvel kimashana. Tshuva is about reaching the highest, most level, the level of Elokim that placed the neshama within us. So the Rebbe says this is not contradictory. Because he's dealing with chutz, that's why it reaches so high. Specifically through tshuva on the sins, we reach the true idea of the spirit returning to Hashem. Understood from what we explained in a previous part in a mimer that the Rebbe said in a Parshat Sav. Only through refining the lowest of the low, do we reach the highest of the high, the K'moikin, but in this Soltuts in this case, through on the simple literal meaning of a sin that's very, very low. We reach to the level that Hashem that gave it. Gavoya b'yoser, the highest, most level. Bezel, top of the third page. Mashamar Azal Chazal said, "B'mach mishmal tshuva oimdim ein tzaddikim gmurim yichon lamed." But we're in the place where Shabbat Shuva stand, complete tzaddikim cannot stand over there. The Alpha Pishat tzaddikim gmurim of David Asim B'Shleims, the Bir Klibas Noiga. Though the tzaddikim gmurim did their service complete in a complete and perfect manner in refining Klibas Noiga, I did Bir Divrei Rishus, because tzaddikim they are not involved with Shosh Klat Meis. Tzaddikim they are engaging in the physical world, but their engagement in the physical world is with klippus noiga items. So when they eat kosher food, they make a bracha on it, and through that they elevate it through their avodah afterwards and their intention b'shas ma'aser. So their contact and their engaging is only klippus noiga. Now the Rebbe says an additional point that's brought down some places. It's not that tzaddikim have no elevation of the klippus, the Shalklat Meis. But the way they elevate the Shalklat Meis is not through being engaged with them, but through disengagement. He says 3 lines from the top, so too, the tzaddikim gemurim, they also refine gimel klipsat meis, but in the manner of pushing away. It's not through engaging with it, it's not through elevating it. Their birur of Gimel Kusat Meis is through disengaging or removing and cutting themselves off from Gimel Kusat Meis. Still in all, Baal Tshuva are higher Makal Makim. Kim Shabal Tshuva Poil Habirur Des Doina, since the Baal Tshuva affect the refinement of the intentional sins, Hamata Mata B'Yoser, that which is very, very below. Lachein Keshaydet Tshuva Shleim Des Doina Snaslik is therefore. Went through a complete tshuva, the intentional sins become to him like mitzvahs, magia l'darganas b'yoser shalamayla medarg tzaddikim gemurim. So he reaches a level that is so high, even more so than the level of tzaddikim gemurim. Ad tzaddikim gemurim ein yicholim lamed ba, till even tzaddikim gemurim cannot even stand over there. K'mavur ba'arucha b'ramam hilchas tshuva. The Rebbe also brings down, like it's explained at length in the Rambam Hilchos Tshuva, it's explained at length over there. I mean, not over there. Over there, it explains that the very fact that a tzaddik never really tasted bad. So therefore, the challenge for him is not as difficult as someone that was engaged in bad and involved in bad, and he has developed already a taste and a geschmack in bad, and then he tears himself away from that. That's a much more powerful devotion to Hashem. So that's why the Baal Tshuva is in a higher level. But also the Rebbe a lot of times juxtaposes, there's 2 types of expressions used in Chazal, or 2 nuschos. One nuschos is einam oimdim sham or einam yicholim lamed sham. So the expression that the Rebbe is using over here is that they cannot stand over there. That means that it's so high that the tzaddikim can't even approach it. It's totally beyond their level. But this will be understood that on the one hand, the paraduma, all its actions were done outside. But the sprinkling, the sprinkling was actually inside towards facing the oil moed. Because through the tshuva on the intentional sins in the literal sense, something that's called outside the boundary of kedusha, we reach the innermost level, till the innermost of the innermost level. Like we said before, that tshuva reaches all the way to the God that gave us the neshama, the source of the neshama. This is similar to the avodah of Yom Kippurim. Yom Kippurim shaykh l'paradum. Yom Kippur is also connected to paradum. In moving midrash Chazal, like it's understood, what the Chazal's drasha is that that Chazal darshan about the Kohen Gadol. His preparation was they compare the law and statute of Yom Kippur to the law and statute of Paraduma. Echad zeh means the Kohen Gadol Ve'echad zeh kohen haserves hapara. Both the kohen gadol does the service on Yom Kippur, and both the kohen that burns up the para, mazin olav me'efra para. We sprinkle on him from the ashes of the para. This is something that's a tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu. Actually, I think we'll stop over here. We still have to continue a little bit more the association between Yom Kippur and the Para Aduma. I don't want to rush through it. Any questions before we sign off?
This is kind of a stupid question, but